Do, 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 do. I am not going to use any copyrighted music because YouTube would shut this down. What I'm going to do is after 12 seconds in, I'm going to say, hey, hi, I'm Ryan Erickson. You are Ron Purser, and we are here together on Riffing with Ryan, which is what I call this place that we are right now.
Yeah.
And today we are going to speak of your current and most present book, Mind Space, which is kind of I was going to say it's kind of a curtain over what is really in the book, and and
Yeah.
and I would like to uncover that a bit. And first, I know you from your managerial work, but if you wouldn't mind saying a second or two about what you'd like people to know about you before we go deep into the arcana of the book.
Well, I think I'll say that I'm a latecomer to playing electric guitar. I know we share in common our musician commonality. So,
Yes.
but well, no, I'm recently semi. I wouldn't use the word retired. I hate that word. I think that's kind of an industrial modern word.
Yeah.
But I taught at San Francisco State for about 28 years in the College of Business Department of Management. And before that, I was teaching at Loyola University of Chicago in a very interesting program on in organizational development. It was a master's program.
Mm.
Uh, so yeah, that's the standard bio CV version, but
Yeah. So and
yeah,
it's
yeah.
just one of the things I podcasts or whatever, go, oh, it's the CP, please. Oh, and Ron Percher is this, that, and the other. I'm like, okay, fine. You say what you want to say, and let's go into what
Yeah,
is
yeah,
here.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, so the book Mindspace is the most recent one. The previous book, well, was McMindfulness, right? So that hit huge. That wonderful book that kind of skewers uh, the the mindfulness industrial complex, shall we say? And that's that very stinging critique. This book is not that, and I would like to know how this book appeared to you, and why was this important to you to bring this book into our awareness?
Mm. Yeah, it's a great place to start. I think I've mentioned this to a number of people, but after McMindfulness came out, or even before that, really, I was going to mindfulness conferences, and uh, I had already written a article with David Lloyd called "Beyond McMindfulness," which was kind of the beginning of this book in 2013. The book came out in 2019, but I was getting a lot of pushback, obviously, about that critique, and it's like, well, what's your solution? What's the alternative? You're good at
Mm,
pointing out the flaws and sort of the problems with contemporary mindfulness. So it kind of grew out of that, partly grew out of that question.
yeah.
And so McMindfulness was sort of the diagnosis, if you want to use an OD term.
Mm,
Uh, and but critique alone doesn't really heal anything,
yeah.
and so I have a long-standing, in more than interest, a long-standing. I wouldn't use the word devotion; that's too religious, but a long-standing commitment to a vision that a Tibetan Lama by the name of Tarthang Tuku,
Mm,
a Tibetan Nyingma Lama who came to the United States in 1969. And in
mm,
1977, he published this book called Time, Space, and Knowledge, A New Vision of Reality.
yeah.
Uh, I stumbled onto that book in the early 80s. Uh,
Mm,
and so, even though I was critiquing mindfulness, I always had in the back of my mind, uh, you know, we really need to move into something much broader in terms of a different way of seeing consciousness in reality. I guess maybe
Mm.
that's one way of putting it.
Yeah.
So it's sort of completing the circle, so to speak. Uh,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, we can get into that. That
Yeah.
story could go for an hour, so I don't want to take up much
Well, I know.
of
I
the
mean,
whole
the thing is that there's at least four episodes in the book because of time, space, knowledge, and
and
being,
being. Yeah, that's
which
correct. That's right.
it. And I mean, I'm kind of revealing the lead or revealing the conclusion here, but I think if you read the table of contents, you'll get it. The so it came in '77. You uncovered Tarthing's book there, The Time, Space, and Knowledge, and assuming it hit you hard at that point.
Yeah, I was
Yes.
26 years old. I was very open, and
Yeah.
I needed to be hit.
Okay, okay. So there before that,
Yeah.
as you're being in the world, that you had some views about right and wrong and what
Hmm.
meditation and mindfulness was. And so tell me a little bit about who you were before. And again, realizing time being one of
Yeah, yeah,
the
sure. Uh, Cliff Note version is that I was an undergraduate student at Sonoma State. I was studying, I actually transferred from Illinois because of this particular program, which was very unique in humanistic psychology.
Mm,
I was in a traditional experimental psychology program, and at the time I was very curious. I was reading voraciously, like Carl Jung's books, and I was dabbling in all sorts of spiritualities. You know, at that time, Alan Watts was you know, Yogananda's book, Autobiography of a Yogi, Zen and Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. All those
yeah,
things were floating around in the zeitgeist at that time.
yeah.
Carlos Castaneda. Anyway, I was just so curious about psychology, depth psychology in particular.
Mm,
But when I discovered that there was a program at Sonoma State, I moved there, and it was just a phenomenal education experience. And that's when I had the book Time, Space, and Knowledge a
yeah.
couple of years earlier, but I had just put it on the shelf. I couldn't really penetrate it. And then I discovered the Enigma Institute, which is Tarthing Tuku's institute, was in Berkeley. So I trucked down to Berkeley and discovered they had a course on it. I was a terrible student in some ways. I was having so much fun, but I did really well in courses that I enjoyed.
Yeah.
But for general education courses where they force you to take like geography or astronomy, it was like, oh, biology. I was like, I'm not interested. And so, but
Golf.
I, but yeah, but, cool. But I managed to graduate. So when I came across that course, yeah, it really brought me into my embodiment was the beginning of it to really start settling in a
Yeah.
way that was unusual
Yeah.
because it wasn't just the meditating. It wasn't just meditating on the breath or focused concentration, which is what we typically think of when we think about meditation, is how to calm the mind, focus on the present moment,
Yeah.
uh, and the body is often a point of departure, even with many Buddhist meditative approaches. You
Yeah.
learn how to watch the breath, observe sensations and feelings,
Mm-hmm.
but it started with the body, but not in that manner. It was more like no, we're going to kind of we're going to use our imagination and sort of disrupt your whole notion of what a body is.
Yes.
Yeah,
Which that's a radical view. And
it is.
it totally, and when I didn't know what to expect when I picked
Hmm.
up the book.
Right.
And again, I kind of had a hint that it was the the yin to the yang of McMindfulness. Maybe that's backwards, but um, then it struck me not necessarily. I thought there's going to be a lot of meditation practice and that kind of stuff, and like what I would have expected, and it is totally not that. It to me, it struck me as a philosophy book. I mean, that is questioning
It,
reality, and that
yeah.
how do I perceive reality, and what is my relationship to that? And like, and it took me a while to actually kind of acclimate to that, but by the end, it's different. It's different. So maybe tell me a little bit about what is it about this, I guess, philosophy that drew you?
Yeah, that's really a astute way of putting it. It is a philosophical investigation. It is an inquiry into the nature of reality, uh, into the nature of our being,
Yeah.
into the dimensionality that we live in. And we live in space and time. I mean, you can't get around that.
Mm-hmm.
And we also seem to be able to know that we live in space and time.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are three fundamental facets of our being,
Mm-hmm.
which we take for granted. And so the first book is very rigorous in terms of it's very systematic and methodical and sequential. Uh, and the great thing about having been 26 years old in this particular class is there were only like 4 or 5 of us. Uh,
Mm.
and we would read the text line by line, slowly, reflectively discuss, a paragraph could take a whole
Mm.
night, two
Oh
hours.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
then we would do these experimental exercises and then go back and reflect on the text. And I didn't discover until recently, in the last 4 or 5 years, that in the Christian mystical tradition, that's actually what they call Lectio Divina, which is part of their meditative tradition, is
Wow.
usually translated as divine reading, a divine reading of
Mm.
scripture, but this is not a
Mm.
scripture. It's far from it. So it is philosophical, but not on the level of, even though there are very abstract ideas in there, it's meant to come into your experience. It is an experiential investigation using our mind to
Mm.
question our assumptions and our presuppositions about the nature of space and time. So, unlike
Yes.
traditional meditation, where we think thinking is the enemy, now thoughts do have an issue. There is an issue with thinking and minding and thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
We can get to that, but uh, what most people don't realize is that even in the Buddhist tradition, study and investigation is very important. There
Mm.
are hundreds and thousands of philosophical texts in the Buddhist tradition. They're called
Mm.
sutras, and uh, but this is not a Buddhist text. This is a very unusual contemporary text that is. Uh, it was intended to be for Westerners,
Mm.
particularly those that have a scientific bent. Yeah,
Yeah. And, well, and you have there's the chapter on how science and religion are supported by great space. You
they
know,
can be. Yes,
can
they
be,
can
and
be. Yes,
there's a
we
mind.
in our culture we tend to see a divide between those
Mm.
two.
Yeah.
We see them as jurisdictions that should not be boundaries that shouldn't be overlapping at all. But uh, if you look at some of the greatest scientists like Einstein, they had a very deep spirituality.
Mm.
There are many scientists that are uh, had a vision of reality. They had great imaginations as well.
Well,
And yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Which there's also, I think you are in direct, well, I wouldn't say opposition, but there's a contrast between Tarthang's vision here and your articulation of it, and Descartes from the very basic of it. I think, therefore I am, Well,
Hmm.
and you're saying, and again, I do want to get into a bit of what is great space, what is great time, what is knowledge, but as opposed to I think, therefore I am. Well, is I the I you think it is? Is I real? Is thinking real? And is what is being? So you take that very basic Cartesian, you know, harmony or combination, and you kind of blow it out of the water from the very beginning. So that I don't know. I don't even know where to start with it, other than in the book you start by inviting the idea of, you thought is not thought. And I would like you to go into a little bit of, well, what is this book about, and how would you describe this book to someone who's into mindfulness reading, and like what is the concept you're trying to convey in that?
Yeah, believe me, it's there's so many places that one can start from in this vision, and that's the beauty of it in a way too. Let me, my voice is. I think I'll start from a slightly different angle, and maybe we can
Sure.
get into it. Is that the book is called Mind Space, so we could
Yeah.
start there. It's a metaphor. Yes, it is a metaphor and it isn't. When I say mind has space, I'm pointing to something that we usually overlook
Yeah.
because we're so focused, as you say, on what we're thinking about. And uh, we're focused more on the contents of experience. And you can use the word contents, and also you can use the term objects of experience.
Mm.
Because when we point to things and we think about things, we're pointing to things and we're generating content. The mind, as we ordinarily identify with, as we ordinarily know it, is a great content generator.
Mm.
Uh, and it's sort of designed to be like a business. It's an amazing manufacturer and producer
Mm.
of content, but not only that, it consumes the content that it produces.
Mm.
So in a way, it's in a feedback loop that it is spinning a web. It's a great spider. It's weaving its web, but it's also the weaver. And then it becomes
Yeah.
caught and ensnared in the very web that it has woven. And
Mm.
I don't use, but Tarthing Tuku uses the term focal setting. Focal setting is the aperture on a camera. So in a way, we've kind of woven this, we've self-generated this web, and now we're ensnared and encased in a particular way of knowing, in a
Mm.
particular way of knowing reality. Uh,
Yeah.
mhm,
So right now we are in this. We're in the so was it the local space, the lower space
mhm.
that
L-
my
l-
so my focal setting, like that, my lens is looking, the output of what I'm seeing is this world that I can touch, and that I think this is solid, and that but there's something else here, and that extends beyond that. Is And so that's when you said focal setting, I'm like, that's a super important part of the book in
It really
terms of,
is. It really is.
yeah,
It's almost an organizing thread. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah, all the contents are arising within the focal setting. In fact, even the content of the subject,
Hmm.
the one who is seeing
Mhm.
uh, objects,
Mhm.
is a co-arising of another term we're bringing in terminology, but you could say the subject, you could say the I. The term that's used in the book is bystander.
Mhm.
And bystander is sort of suggestive of I'm standing back.
Mm.
And it's not like you are in the focal setting. The you in the focal setting is part of the focal setting.
Mhm.
And but we don't notice this. We're caught in the web. We're caught the focal setting is habitual. And we all reinforce it.
Yeah.
It's a consensus reality that is reinforced through culture and it's reinforced through language. Uh, but there are anomalies that occur where
Mm.
things break down, or we have things happen in our life that upset the focal setting. We can get into that, but the whole notion is we think that the mind is something located inside the head.
Yeah.
And it's almost as if we have this image of, I use the term the inner manager.
Mhm.
It's like the mind's inside the head, and there's this control room, that's generating experience. And,
Mhm.
but the shift in focal setting, by opening the focal setting, which is what this philosophical and experiential approach is that we can begin to have glimpses that all the seeing and hearing and feeling and thinking that is already happening within space, within
Mhm.
a spacious awareness that isn't necessarily confined to me. And and
Yeah.
and and that suggests that space is not just a container for the contents of experience or for the objects that exist in the world. It's not just an empty, neutral void. It's not just a empty container out there. It's
Yeah.
almost that space it's a dimension of experience. It's a dimension of our being. It's almost like the basic space of phenomena, the ground of phenomena, which
Mm.
by which the openness of space is a potentiality which allows for appearances. You could say the diversity of appearances that makes it consciousness. Because usually we think space is just an empty thing that separates us,
Yeah, it's a
one
void.
thing from another. There's distance, uh, and it's sort of a radical vision to say that space is actually conscious. Consciousness and space are inseparable,
Mm. That
and
consciousness arises from space, that everything arises from space or
well, we
space
have to bit.
allows that to happen, kind of.
Yeah, that's a good starting point. But even the notion of arising, uh,
Arising
we're
from.
getting rising from and
Yeah.
going to. This this is where it gets kind of tricky because we haven't talked about time yet, and it's probably not a good time to talk about time. but uh, but everything we perceive, right? Everything we perceive,
Mm.
our world, our body, our sense of self, is
Yeah.
appearing. Yes, within this
Yeah.
dynamic of space and awareness. Yeah, that's a good way of
S
putting it.
and one concept that I eventually came through as reading about space in this book and how you're talking about it. And I think now even, and you're talking about the glimpses, the
Hmm.
provisional pieces of this space that we're in, that
Hmm.
kind of reminded me of the Matrix a little bit. That there's this
Yeah, yeah,
a
yeah,
little
yeah,
bit. So
yeah, yeah.
so that everybody, I'm here, this is the world that, but then once there are some folks who see something, that there's some glitch. There's something here that's just it's different, and then you're invited into this other thing, and you're jettisoned out into this next realm of space, and then there's space outside of that space, and that's what kind of came up to me. I mean, it's a little bit on the side of it, but your reaction to that tells me that I'm close to what that felt like. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, sure, sure. I mean, we all have these special. People have peak experiences.
Mm.
People take psychedelics and they realize, oh, things aren't as fixed as we thought they were, and
Mm.
or people have paranormal experiences that are unusual. There are lots of, but they don't even have to be that dramatic. Uh, you know, listening to music, and there's just a feeling of awe, and wonder, and just a sense
Mhm.
of complete, non-dual kind of intimacy with what's occurring. It could be very subtle. It could be very ordinary as well.
Mm.
But so this notion of awakening, I think we're seeing glimpses. It's not about constructing anything new. It's more like opening the focal setting and recognizing the nature of reality, which is not something that we have to achieve or attain as something special or something extraordinary. It's more like coming back in, coming back home to, you could say, ourselves,
Mm.
our being, which is, what's the purpose of human being? And it's interesting that the word being is, we say human being.
Mhm.
So, what is the nature of being, of the human being? What is its true nature
Mm.
in this particular space and time with the capacity to know? That's the kind of the visionary questioning that is prominent in this book.
Yeah. And this gets me to something. I couldn't go 2 pages without highlighting some kind of quote that hit me in the face, and from the words you're using, and Tarzan's words. It's kind of a, you're dancing with it, with his words in there, and you're kind of extracting them to a place where if I had just read Time, Space, and Knowledge, I don't know how I would have made sense of it in this way. But the way you kind of uh, you allow it to appear in the book is really wonderful. And you're saying a couple words there that kind of get to the end. There's this wonder. There's this wonder. There's vitality. There is again there's a musicality to so many of your concepts in the book, which is very close to my heart, and I know it's yours. Talking about harmony and the notes are not the player, and um,
Yeah, yeah,
and like I said, I'm a little bit overwhelmed because I'm like, you talk about the magical world and magical thinking being this horrible thing, but really you're talking about a very deep essence of maybe magic is the magic is always here. We are the magic, and that is, and as we experience each other, that beingness is the magic. And uh, again, that's just my take on it after having read the book. Um, but so we were on Great Space, and kind of the concept of there being this not just the space that we are in and we can perceive as knowers and thinkers, but there's something more than that. Do you want to say more about space before we get into time and how that there's a difference there?
oh yeah. I think there's a lot more to say about space. Yeah. Mm, now that you asked me that, I'm sort of uh,
I could read a lot from here. So, like, is that just a random page?
sure.
I'll go here. Um, the body can be felt as object and space.
Mm.
That's what
Hmm.
you said.
Hmm.
Um, it is embracing ambiguity as a provisional mode of a wider intelligence.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's part of the investigation in the beginning is um, we have this sort of familiar relationship with our body. Uh, the body is something that we inhabit, uh, but the early investigations are called the giant body exercises. And like other things in the world, we see the body as a thing, as a kind of an opaque, or a skin encapsulated organism
Yeah.
in which we are bounded by. Uh, and we have a rather, maybe I shouldn't say we, I mean, there's kind of a clunkiness in terms of how we relate to the body as a thing, because there's a mind-body sort of a mind-body dualism where there's a split between thinking, feelings, emotions, sensations, and there's not an integration with the body. So the early investigations begin with the body by imagining it as extremely spacious and large, like a giant. And we're kind of invited to travel into the body as if we were very tiny and to explore all the organs and various subsystems within the body, and use imagination to begin to play with these taken for granted organs and separate body parts that are inside of us, and to open them up using the
Well,
imagination.
right. And what I would say about that also is that, well, Ron, that kind of sounds like, pay attention to your toes, pay attention to your knees, and pay attention to
Yeah.
this, that in all the traditional mindfulness stuff. But
Yes.
what you bring into it, there's this idea of translucency about this, which was very, it's like, wow, how do I make sense of that? And so can you say something about how that knowing is different?
Yes, that's an extremely good point there. Yeah, unlike other meditation instructions where feel your feet on the ground, feel your breath, watch your breath. No, this approach is really challenging the solidity of the body as it's presented to us, as we've come to become familiar with our own bodies as something solid and opaque and dense.
Mm,
And so these exercises are ways, again, of opening the focal setting and how we see the body, how we relate to the body, how we inhabit the body by generating kind of a visionary quality of imagining that all the boundaries of every single organ, every single blood vessel, every single atom, every nerve ending, every neuron, whatever it may be, completely kind of shines and becomes transparent. It's still
mm,
there, but at some point, these exercises ask us to completely open the outlines of the contours of the body, inner and outer,
mm,
until they completely dissolve and merge with space. Kind of an ecstatic opening. This is kind of the first 4 or 5 exercises. And that's just to kind of challenge the notion that the body is a solid and opaque thing.
the-
However, that
mm,
translucent knowing that you're referring to, it is a way of seeing which does not negate appearance, does not negate the notion of the body, does not negate the appearance of how we appear as bodies, how things appear. Because then we're asked to come back. Okay, now reimagine the body as you ordinarily see it, as solid,
mm,
opaque, and dense, and ask yourself, is that space experience any different from this more profound, open, transparent space that we just imagined the body becoming kind of transformed into this translucent, open space? Is
mm,
that any different than the body as we ordinarily see it as solid? No, because space still accommodates solidity. Space is so open that it can accommodate, kind of like the ambiguity. It's both open, it can appear completely open, but at the same time appear as it appears, as
mm,
we ordinarily see things, because this is the visionary quality, is that we see through appearance. We see the nature of appearance, the true nature of appearance. The true nature of appearance is not necessarily something that is independent. It exists independently of other things, that it comes into being and then disappears. No, maybe the nature of being is that it has no beginning and ending.
Mm,
It is so creative, and it is so unceasingly creative, infinitely creative, and
mm.
space actually has no location. Space has you can't define space either. It's not an object.
Mhm.
Uh, on the other hand, it's not just a nothing. It's not just a mere nothing, because to say it's a nothing is affirming that nothing is something. Now you have another concept that you're calling nothing. But space
And
is
you
beyond those kinds of
and
characterizations.
and by the end, you even say, well, even using the word great space, even using a label for it kind of, I don't know,
Yeah,
profanes it. This is
in a way,
ineffable and
yeah.
unspeakable that
In
that
a
it is
way, in a
there.
way, in a way. But we are language beings, so we have to use language in a skillful way that can help us to uh, uh, investigate and to express this kind of creative, infinite capacity of our being.
Mm,
And we
mm,
have this infinite capacity of speech and thinking
mm,
and language. But
yeah.
how do we use thinking, speech, and language? These are our knowing capacities, see? And
Mm,
so, um, in no shape or form are we ever negating and going into some nihilistic philosophy to saying nothing exists and it's all space and space is nothing. No, we're not doing that.
mm,
We're trying to come to a experiential understanding uh, of the nature of our being, which is seems to be in space. If we look at the
mm.
Earth, it's floating in space. Galaxies are in space. Atoms are in space. Quarks are in space.
Clusters of galaxies are
Clusters
in
of
space.
galaxies that James Webb has shown us. This is like, oh God, this is kind of way beyond anything that we ever imagined. And space is way beyond anything we could imagine.
It's too big. It is too big. When something is infinite, it's hard to make sense of. Like, what am I, the I that I think I am in this vast infinity? And you also mentioned that in some mindfulness practices, that this, if you just let yourself into that infinity, it is almost pathological that that we can, I'm not stating it right, but you talk about that the traditional, if there is not some kind of space that's created around you, you're wandering through the affordance of this lower space into infinity, like it can freeze you. Um, I, am I close to what you were talking about that, or is there, how would you reframe that kind of, traversing a boundary?
Uh, well,
Am I making sense, first of all?
uh, I'm not exactly following you, but I think I know what you're alluding to. Um, there can be an imbalance of sorts. If Yeah, this gets into some fairly subtle points, but uh, it has to be a balanced approach to opening our dimensionality. One way of putting it is that uh, you see this sometimes in meditation retreats. There are adverse effects of meditation research now that is
Yes.
quite prevalent. If you throw people into the deep end, uh, especially without much guidance or without much community support or even some sort of context for trying to understand what's actually occurring, it can really kind of destabilize people. But I
Yes.
think the issue here has to go deeper. Um, is that this approach is gentle. This approach has to naturally, you could say, and organically unfold. It's not a forced approach to kind of jam ourselves into some sort of special, extraordinary experience or altered state. In fact, that approach can actually just uh, cause lots of imbalances because we haven't really opened, you could say, the subjective side, the subjective pole of experience. And then
Mm.
because what happens then is that the seeker or the one that's desiring to attain something special is really striving and really kind of desiring this kind of expansion. And so they may get that, but it overwhelms them because the sense of being a self is still very strong.
Mm.
And so there's not a kind of an opening of the self that's a balanced approach to opening. And because there has to be a kind of a spiral development in one's spiritual growth where you're integrating. So you're kind of unfolding and integrating. So it's not a linear kind of rocket shot
Yeah.
to some special state that one's trying to shoot for. I think
Just
that's kind of what you're referring to.
yeah, it was
Sometimes
it
called the
was
breakout mentality.
yeah, I think it's the harmful nature of meditation practice. That's what you mentioned something specifically about that, and that's what I was hoping to evoke there. Um, the other thing that you spoke of was we talked about it a little bit, this idea of the bystander
Hmm.
and the outstander and
Outside standard, yeah.
the outside and the inner manager. Okay, so
Hmm.
there's lots of terms that you're using in there that I recognize from managerial study, and that
Yeah.
you might recognize. I mean, because I saw in here, I can imagine what was going through your mind having discovered this in 1977 and then entering into corporate consulting,
Yeah.
and like how did that inform it? Had to be like this world is
Yeah.
it's
Yep.
insane. So
Yeah. Well, you are, that's amazing you picked up on that. That's, yeah, the notion of the inner manager did come to me, and I did have a chuckle with it. Uh, so, yeah, we could talk about it. I think when I say inner manager, I'm not pointing to like some spooky demon or in the background, but it's a very familiar function,
mhm,
right? It's a voice of an inner administrator in a way.
mhm,
And it's the doer. Another term is it's kind
mhm,
of the doer. It tries to organize our day and it helps keep things in control. It pays the bills. And ordinary life, we need those functionalities, obviously. However, the problem is when that function quietly starts promoting itself into being the sovereign king of our life.
mhm.
No kings, please. So,
Yeah. No kings,
yeah, no
but then
king. But
what is there? Yeah.
and here's the misplacement. See, is that the inner manager becomes a ruler, and
Mhm,
then we're in a realm. Another term for that. Remember, we talked about the weaving. The mind as a business and the producer as a consumer.
mhm.
Tarthang Tuku has another phrase for that. He said, "We then find ourselves in a regime of mind, a regime of our own making, and
Eek.
the inner manager is the ruler of that regime."
No. Oh
And
God,
so, yeah,
this gets me into this idea also of the Exodus story, that Pharaoh is controlling the slaves, and then there's an exodus that you
hmm,
depart from that. You're departing this control mechanism into the wilderness, and it feels like space is the wilderness, but space was always there.
yeah, right. Well, yeah, that's it. Another way you can think about this too, from a knowing perspective, is that the inner manager, its signature is a narrowing down of awareness.
Yeah.
We talked about this earlier, and awareness is very awareness is pervasive. It's omnidirectional in nature, just like space. It has no location. But what we've learned to do is we've kind of created a forward beam, like a spotlight. So awareness is sort of contracted, and it's almost like we're feeling like we're in a fighter jet cockpit. The way we know things. We're like,
Mhm.
zooming in on things, and the inner manager is like this fighter jet pilot who
Mhm.
has to, very narrowly, maneuver that plane and
Mhm.
keep the tight grip on the control of one's operating system, which is
Mm.
the nature of our mind itself.
Well, yeah,
And
yeah. Well,
so, yeah,
yeah.
and when it runs our spiritual life, then we have some real problems because then the inner manager is becoming kind of the critic of everything we're doing spiritually. It becomes meditation and becomes very painful.
You're
It
not
becomes
meditating well enough, says the inner manager.
right. It becomes
You're.
another project of self-optimization. It's that and
Uh,
the inner manager loves projects. It's a project manager. So
uh,
give it
yeah.
meditation, and it will do its job just as well. It will do.
And it will give you your performance review on how well you meditate. You
Right.
know,
It'll track your
it,
progress and measure and performance reviews. Right.
and
Right.
it has the standards, and it gives you the comfort. Oh, I am meditating well enough. Thank you, manager.
Yeah.
And what develops, I think you may be talking. There's a dependency that develops. That you depend. You authorize the inner manager to guide you, and like, I feel good now. I feel relieved that I have meditated as well as the manager has told me I have meditated.
Yeah, that brings up another point that I can't remember who said this. I saw it recently, but I think we've seen meditation in the West as a kind of a dietary. We take a dietary approach. What I mean by that is meditation is really medicinal. In
Mm,
other words, it's something you take, and if it heals, you don't keep taking it. It's not
mm,
a dietary. It's not like a dietary regimen. I know that's a
mm,
strange way of putting it, but you're absolutely right that the inner manager loves intensity. It loves to keep things moving and loves to
mm,
run the show. And but we're coming back to this. The deepest illusion here is that there is a central agent involved that's running the show. The inner manager is another way of talking about the bystander.
mm,
Right. And that's what we came with Descartes. I'm the thinker of the thoughts. I'm the manager of the breath. I'm the owner of my experience. This is my body. These are my feelings.
mm.
It's the managerial voice that's making these claims. And if we treat it as a claim, I mean, it's not treating it as a claim. It's treating it as a fact.
Yeah,
And
it's
and
it's the
so
divine right of kings
it's the divine
in
right of
some way.
kings, and it declares its own authority. It stamps its own authority. It's kind of a self-authorized agent
Mm,
that it refers. It's self-referential, right? The stamp of approval is the inner manager. It's a feedback loop,
mhm,
and the difficulty is if we use the same apparatus to try to see the feedback loop, to try to break free of it, we're just we're still caught because we're using the same rules, the same protocols, the same sort of code, and that's
mm,
not going to work. So that's why space is our friend.
mm.
That's why space is so important, is that space is not contingent on thinking.
Oh, boy, this
Mhm.
brought me to this, you're alluding to something else that I read that really kicked me in the ass too, is that space, time, and knowledge are self-managing, right?
Right.
And so I'm not managed by any of those three. I am not my being, space, time, and knowledge are in this dance together.
Hmm.
That we are, and I would say that we're making music together. Like we are interacting with each other. I'm listening to you at the same time these two others are listening to me, without some senior vice president of being sitting up there and saying, no, you're being wrong or you're being right. You're good job. You get a performance review for your being. But no, we are in this love together, right?
Yeah, it's definitely much more participatory and democratic, and you could say that self-organizing is another term, but I don't even want to use the self-organizing. It's organizing.
Yeah.
It's presenting, it's manifesting. It's a field interaction, right?
Mm,
These are field interactions that are occurring,
mm,
and the problem is that we do get in the way
yeah.
of things flowing naturally. Of we are our own worst enemy when we're kind of locked into this narrow focal setting, and
Mm,
that's one of the, you could say, benefits of this approach is the easing up of tension,
mm.
mental tension, bodily tensions, which then allows energies to flow more naturally. As we all know, as musicians, if you're all tensed up, you're not going to play very well. You're not going to
Yeah.
improvise.
There's no enjoyment
There's
in
no
that
enjoyment,
for the player
right?
or the audience or anything like that. A couple of the other there's 16 exercises which are great, which now I see in retrospect they're very, I mean, progressive in a way that they build like that they appear
They build on
and
each other. Yeah.
they build on each other and they're really wonderful. There are also these dialogues that you
Oh yeah,
play.
yeah.
And the last one really hit me because you bring in another character that we haven't talked about yet. There's the inner manager,
Hmm.
then there's the ego, and time, space, and knowledge are they're the council, right? They're the council. But then there's another member on the council named Death,
Oh yeah, yeah. I remember that dialogue.
and yeah, and it's lovely in that. So that also says, well, the beingness and the death is, there's a, dare I say, a vitality of death, which alludes to another philosophical person, Peter Kestenbaum, who wrote the book called The Vitality of Death.
Oh,
And
hmm.
and you, I don't know, it's just there was such a connection there about how you describe death as not this fear thing. It is just part of the being. And that death and being, they arrives from, they appear. And that just to me was a very uh, delicate and elegant way of bringing death into the conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, when I first wrote that initial dialogue, death wasn't in the dialogue, and when I stared at it, something it came to me that no, death needs to be brought into this conversation, and that's uh, these dialogues are interesting. Tarthing Tuku in some of his later books started playing around with sort of not exactly these kinds of dialogues, but I also went through a process called voice dialogue, which was a therapeutic process that Hailstone and Sidgerstone invented. Uh,
Mm.
I went through their workshop, and all these things were kind of swirling around, but I think that our spiritual life, actually, well, even our ordinary life, unfolds as kind of an inner dialogue that's going on in our heads. We're constantly talking
Mm.
to ourselves. And I thought it was a way to break up the writing, too, to kind of bring things to life in a theatrical way, right? That
Yeah.
to give voice to these aspects of ourself, the manager, the space, and
Yeah, there's and it's very stark, the difference in language.
yeah.
The ego
We,
talks like, "What do you? This is bullshit, Ron. This is just
yeah,
garbage." And then the
absolutely.
manager is like, "Who's in control? who's in control,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then time and space and knowledge are saying these lovely poetic things that eventually calm down the ego and calm
Right.
down the manager.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
we can't. I felt like we have to allow humanity to enter into the dialogue in the sense that we do have doubts, we do
Yeah.
have skeptical questions, and we shouldn't silence them. That in fact, any good philosophical inquiry should bring these doubts into the forefront and can only sharpen our investigation, right? And so,
Mm.
in a way, these are all sort of working to decenter our assumptions. So instead of suppressing inner conflicts, we really need to kind of let them speak without identifying with any particular single one. It's kind of a literary approach to. It's another kind of experiential literary approach, I think. Right? You you shift from being the protagonist inside the drama to realizing you are also the space in which this drama is unfolding.
Yes. You are responsible. You have ownership of this. You own this situation as well. But
They're a
well,
mirror. Yeah, they function as a mirror of our interior conversations, right? Yeah.
oh, you're bringing me back two places because I mentioned ownership. This idea of I am my property, right? There's this claiming
Hmm.
of self as property. It, you it brought me to there. I don't know why it brought me there, but the other thing, again, talking about the human being, I found a quote here, and I'd like to see how it lands with you and what the other part of it. It says, "What if being is not an answer at all, but the refusal of the question?"
Hmm. Hmm.
And I'm wondering which question is that? Why am I being, or what is being? Well,
Right. Um, well, I think that the mind always wants to pin things down. It wants to know something for certain. It wants to be able to pin a label on something and then claim that this is known and
mm,
something that I know and I claim to know it. And so, if we can be okay with a different approach to uh, inquiry that doesn't require us to have answers, but to see questions as a form of vitality, to leave things in a kind of open questioning, that any boundary that appears or any sense of ownership of something comes to make a claim, that
mm,
we can question that. In other words, knowing is not bound by what is known. And so to refuse the question is probably, what is this?
mm, mm.
What is all this? I don't know. And that's the beauty, that's the wonder of it. I don't know. And
And
maybe
that's
is
okay.
a very healthy stance to have towards being. So
Yeah.
that's how I would respond to that.
Um, Boy, and these are. I'm looking at all these highlights I have about. I'm trying to find one about freedom. You talk about freedom a lot here, also,
Hmm.
which is very interesting because it relates to Kestenbaum, relates to Peter Block as well, who I'm a big fan of. That there's a Kestenbaum quote that is the price of freedom is anxiety.
The price
Okay.
of freedom is anxiety.
And anxiety is not a pathology. Anxiety is the human condition. That is, it's the idea of existential anxiety
Hmm.
being the human condition. That I am, well, again, I know you're going to talk about I am. That those two words are kind of a trigger other ways. Who's the I and who's the M? But you talk about freedom in another way as freedom of property. Okay, So the speed with which freedom becomes property shows how deeply the reflex of self-centeredness is ingrained.
Can you read that again? I can't even remember that.
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
in the this is in the chapter called The Nearness of Vastness, which
Uh-huh.
these chapter names are beautiful as well. It says, um, the speed with which freedom becomes property
Mm-hmm.
shows how deeply the reflex of self-centeredness is ingrained. My freedom, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. There is a staking of a claim of ownership that is the nature of, you could say, how the self maintains its identity.
Mm.
Because identity is the staking of a claim. Here I am,
Yeah.
right? Here I am, and so we have to question. Well, what do you mean by here?
And what do you mean by I and what do you mean by
Be by
am?
am. Yeah, I know this sounds kind of dumb, but these are very fundamental questions that we really don't take
Yeah.
seriously, but we have to, because when we stake a claim of ownership, what do we mean by property? What do we mean by personal property? I think maybe is a more accurate way of putting it. To say I own something is to, especially usually the most intimate thing that we own is the body.
Yeah.
This is my body. But we also own our identities. This is my identity. This is my self-image, how I see myself. And one example I use quite a bit here and there in the book is that you can see this threat to one's sense of ownership when you get angry. It's usually your self-image is threatened in some way.
Mm.
You have a strong claim of ownership that you want to maintain your self-image, and when that self-image is threatened existentially, or even just arbitrarily, mundanely, we react because we feel that our claim is being called into question, our self-image. And so you can feel that contraction, because when that happens, then the sense of I is kind of taking up the whole screen, right?
Mm.
And your feelings are just completely, that's all you can kind of pay attention to, is what's going on in the body, the adrenaline, the reactivity, and so forth.
Mm.
And so we have and we also identify with those feelings. So we own them. We feel like these are my feelings, right? And
Yeah.
um, so that whole mechanism is reflexive. It's almost on automatic pilot, so to speak, when that
Mm.
happens. And
Mm.
so I think that that's where the self-centeredness comes in. The freedom that we supposedly thought we had suddenly disappears, and we're suffering
And in bondage.
and in bondage. Yeah.
Yeah. I want there's as I just realized we're over an hour. I barely got through all the things that I wanted to get through. But there's, as you mentioned, there's the trinity of time, space, and knowledge, and there's the quadrinity of all four: time, space, knowledge, and being. And I was trying to find the quote in here, but you talk about the openness of great space and the vitality of great time
Hmm.
and the clarity of great knowing. And then was the being, was it the wonder of being? I'm trying to think if you would bring that phrase into what arises and appears in you from me speaking those three. What is that fundamental phrase we're talking about?
Yeah. Well, space, time, and knowing, or knowledge, these three dimensions are ways of talking about our being. Uh, they're sort of fundamental facets of our being. They're inseparable.
Mm.
Now, great space, as you uh, as you mentioned, the quality of great space, experientially, you have to be careful because we don't want to conceptually say this is it. But great space has the nature of the capacity for openness.
Mm.
Openness in the sense of accommodation, a an allowing quality. Uh,
Mm.
it's empty, but empty in a way that is uh, it's a fertile emptiness. Maybe that's a way of putting it. It has a fertility, capacity of fertility. It's
Mm.
not dead openness. This is an alive quality of openness. And from a meditative point of view, sometimes space is felt as very still, very peaceful, you know. However, nothing is static.
Mhm.
Everything is changing, everything is moving, everything is coming and going, apparently coming and going. But where? From where to where? Well, if this movement is time,
Mhm.
so space has such fertility that it gives birth, you could say, to movement. But it is an unborn sort of movement. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, it's not coming from space because space isn't a originator. It's not like some sort of primal thing, some sort of progenitor of something. No,
Mm.
you can't really say it's anything that's doing something. It's not doing anything except it's mysteriously the mother or the womb of all appearances that are appearing magically, you could say. It's the display or the dynamic energy of space
Mm.
is time. And
Mm.
that dynamic energy is the vitality of space, you could say. And when we're not limiting that vitality through a very contracted focal setting, then we could tap into that energy and use it in a way that's beneficial. And we use it beneficially because if we're really kind of in resonant, if we're resonating with space in a way, then we don't see separation. We don't
Mhm.
feel we feel an intimacy with everything that is in our life because
Mm.
it's not other things out there. Everyone is an expression of the same beingness. We're all human
Mm.
beings. We all have some sort of commonality as a species, right? We're all
Mhm.
living on the same planet, right? Living organisms are all sort of interrelated in some way,
Mhm.
dependent on this atmosphere.
Mhm.
And another way of thinking about it is that you could say that the knowing of this space and time appearances, the display, is sort of this luminous uh, quality, capacity to know,
Mm.
which is
Mm.
uh, inseparable. So being, yeah, being is just a kind of a personalization of our humanness, of our human expression of space and time,
Mm.
or space and time's expression of being a human being. So
Yeah, our humanness, yeah?
of our humanness, yeah, you could say that the beingness of human being is space, time, and knowledge, expressing itself
Mm.
through and us. through
Mm.
and as us, I know it's just these things, yeah. So being sort of the wonder, the natural companion, it's the wonder. The way I like to think about wonder, it's the fragrance of being, right? When it's no longer
Mm.
filtered through the machinery of subject and object and bystander and outside standard, machinery of the self. Then,
Mm.
so that's wonder is sort of how awareness responds to its own sense of openness.
Hmm.
So another way of thinking
Yeah.
of being is responsiveness,
Mm.
right? It's so
And
yeah,
what this being responding, knowing within time and space, as the space is ever present, which is,
ever
yeah,
present.
which gets me to another philosopher who landed very hard in my soul not a year ago, a guy named Glenn Aparicio Perry brought.
Oh yeah. Hmm.
So Glenn brought this idea of Jean Gebser, the
Oh yeah,
ever-present
Gipser.
origin.
I
So
I was a big fan of Gipser in the 25 years ago or more. Yeah, ever present.
yes,
Beautiful book.
yeah. So I'm glad that that's in this oeuvre, that that's the ever-present origin, that the Big Bang is like, that's an event, that's a going. That's not this
It's not a
appearance.
one-off.
It's not a one-off. It's you talked about the being the Big Bang being this orgasmic fantasy or something like that. That it's something. It's the male orgasm, the Big Bang. If there was one Big Bang, you got to think, are you coming for more? Mister, yeah, guy.
Yeah,
What
ever
man?
present. Yeah, space can be seen as like an ever present origin. That
Yeah,
there's no uh, there's no end to the depth that openness can reveal.
yeah.
Right. And
Hmm.
every moment becomes a doorway into the infinite in the sense that time is not divided, just like space is not divided into parts. It's non-local. Well, great time is also kind of an expressiveness of that uh, undivided nature of time. And so that's the next book. I'm writing the follow-up to Mindspace, which will be called The Alchemy of Time, which
Hmm.
is based on the next set of chapters in the time-space knowledge vision on time. So,
Hmm. So I had not read Time, Space, and Knowledge. So you're saying there's the book is in three parts? Yes, the
book
time
is in
part.
three parts, and Mindspace is only focusing on the first five chapters of time, space, and knowledge.
Hmm. Wow. So when is that piece of knowing going to appear?
Probably 2027 or 2028. I'm not sure yet,
Hmm.
but within a year or two. Yeah.
Hmm. Wow. Given that we are when and where we are, what is there anything else that you wanted to appear in this space that has not yet made an appearance?
Hmm. Uh, yeah, at this basically we're trying to uh, get out of the cultural trance we're in. That we're not separate selves that
Mm.
have to constantly manage and optimize ourselves. Right. That the trance is exhausting, and
Mm.
that we don't have to chase and kind of be striving endlessly for peace of mind. That meditation does not have to be a effortful striving, and there are ways
Mm.
of coming to terms with our true nature, which can open up, you could say, kind of a complete fulfillment of our being. It's
Mm.
not spiritual bypassing either. It's not denying all of the terrible things that are happening in the world, and it's not a form of quietism and burying our heads in the sand and that kind of thing. So
Mm.
But we are in difficult times. Um, Simple solution is not simple hope or optimism or looking for techniques, while the world burns. That we've tried that. That's not going to work. Uh,
Mm.
uh, but we have to come to a deeper ground, you could say. We have to kind of have a new vision of reality, which is the subtitle of Time, Space, and Knowledge. Really is. That's what we're suffering from. The modern worldview is a cultural. There's a blind spot. It's a cultural collective wound that we're suffering from,
Mm.
and so I hope that people can find ways to become more spacious, and however that speaks to you.
Well, it speaks to me in something that I want. Maybe this is a good place for us to put some ellipsis, to start the coda to the work. Is that there's a lot about that this I is not the I think it is, but there's that you're speaking to the we, you
Yeah.
know, and there's it's that so in this world of so-called division, when the beings that are on this place are all appearing from the same great space. The only difference between us is our focal settings and the output of those focal settings. What does that mean in terms of the relationships we have between each other? We've talked a lot about the relationships between ourselves and great space. But what it feels like you're talking about a trauma, a wound that has separated the each of us as beings, and that okay, we used to have a focal setting that we could share, that the output was shared in some way, but that out the outputs are now out of sync. And what is your take on that? The
Yeah, I think you're pointing correctly that if we see ourselves as atomized, isolated beings, uh, it's very difficult to develop a shared sense of common ground. Um, and so, how do we? What does spirituality mean that that doesn't go in the direction of like McMindfulness did, right? To adjust to these intolerable conditions. So the real question is, what kind of inner stance allows us to stay present and ethically awake, but also capable of collective action? Uh, so on one hand, it's not about retreating into oneself, but it's more about loosening the contracted sense of self, so
mm,
that when we do enter into a space of activism, let's say, that we're a steadier, less reactive, and more responsive form of action, I think, can become possible. So um, I think what matters is a kind of hope. I like Cynthia Bourgeot, uh, who was Father Thomas Keating's very close not companion, but worked with Thomas Keating, who was sort of the revived contemplative Christian centering prayers. Cynthia Bourgeot calls this mystical hope.
mm,
Um, so it's kind of
mm,
the development of this non-reactive, spacious fidelity to what the moment is asking of us, you could say.
mm,
When certainty is gone. Uh, so um, so we don't want to engage in spiritual practices as a way to numb us, right? Uh, so we need approaches that where we're not necessarily investing in the outcomes either, the certainty of
mm,
certain outcomes.
mm.
And mystical hope is sort of hope that does not depend on necessarily outcomes.
Mm.
So there's a loosening of the self. Awareness is less defensive.
Mm.
And so activism then can be fueled not just by outrage, or shouldn't be fueled only by outrage,
Yeah.
but it's nourished by this kind of shared sense of being that you're coming back to. So
Mm.
optimism, ordinary optimism, wants guarantees. It wants to know what the outcomes are going to be. But mystical hope kind of can go forward without requiring those kinds of outcomes. So I think that's one way of thinking about it. That it's not wishful thinking, and it's not hoping that we achieve a particular outcome, but it's the capacity to stay open to what matters, even if the outcome is uncertain. I think that's the kind of spirituality that can be merged with political action,
Mm.
because it's not waiting for anything in particular before it can act. It's responsive to the circumstances, but not out of a. It's not fueled by self-centeredness.
Mm.
It's really asking what is being asked of us together, not how do I
Mm.
feel better. We all have to drive the bus,
Yeah.
is the way Cynthia puts it.
Mm.
And it's not outsourcing our responsibility to saviors or experts or inner managers.
Or I got to say this too, because or artificial intelligences,
Or AI. Yeah.
because that you're talking about something also that hits me real deep about this moment. We are talking about stuff that's hard. I mean, it was not easy for me to get through this book. It was not a convenient read.
Ah.
It was an inconvenient read, but I loved it. I was challenged by it,
Mm-hmm.
as I stayed with it, the challenge went down, and then it became more in me. I enjoyed the inconvenience of it,
Hmm.
and so and I say that because what what AI presents to us, or the chatbots, or all this stuff, is a very convenient way to outsource our thinking.
Off cognitive offloading. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that, so the invitation here for us as human beings, who we're exploring this unknowable um, place of spirituality and shared beingness and all of this stuff, that those things they cannot have, that the machines are incapable of having, and yet there's this charade that is presented to us, that these machines have the answers. So just trust the machines. Don't trust your fellow human beings, because they hate you. You fear each other. And so that's an existential challenge as well. So how do we, you and I, um, face that? My focal settings are different than yours. I want a different output from you, and yet at the same time, if I'm like, oh God, I don't like Ron. Ron wears a red hat, and I got purple hair, and I'm just gonna go do my thing and outsource everything to the machine, and let it do my work. I don't need to learn anything anymore. I don't need to do anything. I just have an answer come back. Um, so that's the world that we live in now, that has come from since 2023, basically. Um, where does space fit now in that creation?
Yeah. I think this has been going on for a long time, way before artificial intelligence. Um, in some respects, you could say that even our own intelligence has been a bit artificial, in the sense
Hmm.
that we're not really in touch with reality. We're more in touch with our concepts about reality, and we've
Mm.
lost touch with, you could say, the intimate nature of what's we feel separate. The sense of uh, the sense of alienation and an estrangement from nature. In other words, our intelligence has been very limited, and it's been artificial in terms of we've depended on artifacts of our mind. And what I mean is, we're very good at carving out and pointing out, conceptualizing, dissecting, and analyzing. The intellect has sharpened its sword of being able to divide and conquer and understand things, but it has virtually no appreciation for you could say the space by which its beingness appears, how everything is dependent, you could say, on something greater than anything, any independent. There is no independent thing that stands apart from reality. There is an undivided wholeness, if you want to use David Bohm's terms. So we've become very fragmented beings. And thinking is Ian McGilchrist, obviously his work comes into play here about the dominance of the intellect, the dominance of the left brain's The Master and Its Emissary is a great book by Ian McGilchrist. He gets into this. He's a neuropsychiatrist. But so AI is just a continuation. It's a mirror of you could say the regime of mind. It's a mirror. It's a technological way of ramping up and outsourcing and amplifying our ordinary way of knowing that we've deployed since going back to the scientific revolution. But even before that, I mean, in Buddhist time, suffering was still happening, way before in the axial age.
Yeah.
So suffering has always been a universal concern. Why the great religions have come into being to call into question what is the nature of human being in its relation to the universe and to all appearances in space and time. Every religion has its way of responding to those great questions.
Yeah.
But AI, I don't want to completely demonize AI on the same time. It's hard to say. The jury's still out on how it could possibly develop in different ways.
Yeah.
There could
Can be very useful.
very benevolent uses for it. If it comes up with ways to cure cancer or deal with some genetic diseases, I think that's great. But you're right. What is our relationship to AI?
Yeah.
What is our cognitive, affective relationship to AI? Because it is becoming we have a agentic partnership with AI, whether we like it or not. The problem with technologies is some of the great critics of technology, of culture, cultural critics of technology going way back, they were so forward-looking, technologies are ecospheres, they're ecosystems, they're not tools. Tools are like something we have exit rights, as my friend Peter Hershock likes to say. But like a hammer is a tool. I'm going to pick up this hammer, I'm going to use it, I'm going to put it back in the garage. Problem with technologies is we become immersed in them. And we saw that with television was and then the internet and social media, now AI. So we have an agentic relationship or partnership with AI, and it's really I think it's easy to see how we can be moving into a post-literate society as children.
Oh,
We talked about digital natives, but now we're going to talk about AI native kids that are,
yeah.
and so you can imagine democracies depend on intelligence. They
Mm.
depend on intelligent citizens and people who can, have discerning qualities of discernment. So yeah, we're definitely in a point to where I think it becomes critical to not let go of our critical intelligence, our capacities for critical intelligence. Yeah.
Mm. Oh,
Anyway,
yeah. Well, I mean, this is. I mean, again, each of these we go a lot deeper into. You mentioned suffering as well, and the knowing that your um, depth of care for the Buddhist tradition. There's a lot of talk about suffering and the nature of suffering. And a question that I like to ask folks, and I asked myself at one point, um, if your work, if your life's work could solve or ease the suffering of one single person, what would that suffering be, and who would that be?
oh, and an actual person, or I'm not.
It's just a kind of person, I guess. Who would be experiencing the suffering that your life's work would solve?
Oh, that's a big question. Um, I hope everyone. I'll be
Mm,
grandiose and say that I'd rather go big or go home.
yeah,
Um, no, I don't
yeah,
know. All I
yeah.
know
Well,
is
I mean,
that
nothing comes to mind. Yeah.
no, I don't know, but I think this is what gets me up in the morning is
Mm,
feeling like I could do my small part.
mm,
Uh, I feel that I can get the word out. The power of the pen
mm,
or the power of the keyboard now
mm.
is
Or the
my way
camera.
of, or camera, like podcasting, and that whatever benefit can ensue to whomever, that's made my day. That's what meaning is about, fulfillment of purpose. We all
Mm,
have a mission. We all have a purpose, and that's another thing that I think that is so potent about this way of seeing, or this vision, is that space, time, and knowledge are inherently, you could say, benefic. In other words, space and time and knowledge are not hostile to us if
mm,
we can participate them in ways which don't reinforce, you could say, the emotional afflictions or our sense of being separate from our nature or being
mm,
separate from being. Because when we do open up into, you could say, these infinite dimensions of our being, then we feel a kind of an intrinsic sense of wholeness or wealth.
mm,
Wealth is not monetary wealth. Wealth is the tangible sense of value. There's value
mm,
to our
mm,
reason for being here
mm,
in this space and time during this particular life that we're inhabiting in this particular body. It's just one way that space and time can present our awareness that we are then fortunate enough to participate in,
mm.
right? And so
Yeah.
this is the celebratory nature of the vision that we all have intrinsic worth and intrinsic value. It's not something that's bestowed upon us, not something we have to
Mm.
earn. It's not something we have to have someone validate. And when we can get in touch with that, then we come
Mm.
alive. We you could say the obstacles start to become thinner and less solid, and we can move. We can begin to think in ways that are beneficial and express ourselves that can be joyful and creative,
Mm.
co-creative. So
Yeah.
that's the beauty. That's the
Mm.
beauty, intimacy, wonder, value. These are this is our nature. These are qualities, are true, are kind of like fundamental values, right? Of
Mm.
and you look at the art. That's what they art displays the beauty, creativity of humanity through the ages, right? And
Mm.
so art plays a very important role too in
Mm.
in this. But the art of being is really why we're here. To
Mm.
artfully engage being in ways with other beings. That's the beauty of it.
Mm. To artfully engage with other beings.
Yeah, it's a dance, it's a play.
Mm. Mm. That of a person who is suffering from, yeah. Mm. I don't even want to name the suffering. What you said was so beautiful about art and beauty and the dance. Yes. Well, Ron, thank you so much.
It
So
was great.
all of you out there, I'm going to take Ron's time in the back room here and say bye-bye to you all out there on internet land, LinkedIn, wherever. Thank you for the precious gift of your time and
Well, this was
attention.
definitely riffing.
Yes.
I was like, oh my God, I feel like, woo, we are riffing big time. So that was fun.
Well, yeah, I had fun too, and I love not knowing where we were going and not knowing where we have ended.
Yeah.
So, all right. Okay, world. I'm talking to Ron in the background, and we'll see y'all later. Be more purple.